the Top 25 Rundown. And here's your host, Alan West.
Good evening. Welcome to the Top 25 Rundown presented by the Sportscast. Today is August 4th, 2023. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all your channels, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.tv, and Apple Podcasts. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It'll help us out tremendously. We are also on DAB Digital Radio. You can listen to us on your smart speaker, play Sportscast. Also, you can visit us on thesportscast.net. Also, follow us on Twitter, the Sportscast1. And check it out, the Sportscast in the iOS App Store. Good evening. Welcome to the Top 25 Rundown Special Edition show for the Big 10 expansion. My name is Alan West. I am here with head of the Turner Cast, Mr. Tyler Turner. How are we doing, sir?
Good.
What a day.
Yes. And you know what I just thought about it? So we now can just be a Big 10 podcast. Not this year, but next year.
True.
Ohio State and Oregon are now officially in the same conference. Seems weird, but it happened. So it's a huge day. I mean, I think this is one of the more monumental days in college football, and there's been a few over the last couple decades where there's been big realignment. But you literally saw one of the most storied conferences in college football dissolve. There's no Pac-12 anymore, so it's not official yet. But they've lost their four biggest brands. They're going to lose Arizona. They're going to lose Arizona State and Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's four teams. It's not even a conference. So that's a good question. What's going to happen with those four? That's food for thought too. So,
You know what's kind of funny? When I was on vacation and I got you on last time, who were two of the schools I said were going to come to the Big 10?
did you say Oregon and Washington?
I did.
Well, I mean, did you actually think there was going to be any other schools come to the Big Ten?
I kind of did, honestly, just because you got to remember this new commissioner that the Big Ten has, whereas the other commissioner, he just went back to the Chicago Bears to try to help them get the stadium funding since he'd been with the Vikings before coming to the Big Ten. Every move he made with the Big Ten was a flop. Remember how he tried to cancel the Big Ten season for football during the COVID year? That went horribly. And then he had the chance to make his mark for the Big Ten, but every time he had his chance, he failed. So instead of him trying to work on making the Big Ten better, he left. And this new commissioner has already started to, I would say, flex his muscle because he's actually been trying to go to different athletic events and talk to different schools to try to see what they want. And even during Big Ten Media Days, he said, look, we're going to talk with all the schools. We're going to look at expansion, and we're going to do what we see that's going to benefit the conference. And I mean, these are some big splashes they've already made.
Now, the only kickback I'm going to give to you, Kevin Warren was the one that brought UCLA and USC to the Big Ten.
Okay, fair enough for him. But the thing was, that was the only thing that he did while he was commissioner. Unfortunately, everything else that he tried to do, it failed spectacularly. Yeah. And so to see that, okay, I will retract mine a little bit, only by saying Kevin Warren, maybe he started what was happening now. But the new commissioner, he has taken what Kevin Warren started and run with it, and it's gone more exponential for the impact that he's been able to make already.
Yeah. And you can argue right now that, I mean, the Big Ten is close to as good as the SEC. It definitely has a broader reach. It's literally from coast to coast. You have some huge brands. They've obviously brought in USC and Oregon specifically, who are two great football powerhouses. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a great conference. It's going to be the interesting thing will be to see how, like, the scheduling dynamics go. I've been running some ideas through my head. I got some mock, like how I would like to see it kind of broken down into like divisions. I don't know if they'll call it divisions, but maybe like pods. So you have like the West Coast pod, you have the Midwest pod, and then you have the East pod. And this just that schedule like according to your pod, most of your games are within your pod, and then just cross. I guess it's divisional is what you call it. It's going to be interesting. That's going to be a little difficult. Maybe not as much for football, but it'll be a little more difficult when it comes to like basketball and some of those sports. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited that Oregon got in. The Pac-12, when they brought their media deal to the table, and it was no linear, subscription only, $20 million per team. I was like, how in the world can you salvage? Why would Oregon and Washington stay in a conference like that? And well, here you go.
I was actually, I was listening on my way to work, and they talked about how the show I was listening to was Rick Neuheisel. He does on Channel 84. And so they talked about how they had done a funeral dirge, and then they heard about the Pac-12 meeting. But when they were trying to talk about like for the stuff for Apple, even though Washington and Oregon, they're only going to get half a share for I think like the next
5 years.
Yeah, but even still, that's 35 to 40 million.
Yeah,
That's
I think it's 33 million is what they got.
Well, even still, projected, you're already getting 13 million more than you're going to get with the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 deal, they were trying to act like it was going to be the biggest deal that they were going to get, and it flopped.
Not only that, it's not just even the money, it's also the fact that the only way people can see you is on a subscription package instead of on Fox, CBS, and NBC, the three media partners of the Big Ten. And I would not be surprised if all of a sudden the Big Ten brings in a fourth media partner, like a subscription package like Amazon. And then obviously Washington and Oregon would be full share on that. So I could see in the end, like, and maybe it's not this year, but maybe it's like 2020, or maybe not next year. Maybe it's like 2026. All of a sudden they do $100 million deal with Amazon, and then you're having another $6-7 million. So they're ultimately how much more money they're going to make, how much more visibility they're going to make, how much better conference it is in. It was a must move by Oregon and Washington. Obviously, I'm a huge Oregon fan. Their fan base wanted them to go in. Today, when there started to be rumblings that Oregon was maybe going to try to make the grant of rights work with the Pac-12, you should have seen the message boards. Because I've been literally following this the whole week, nonstop. The message boards were like literally in deep depression. They were going nuts. They're like, I can't believe, like, we're gonna sign a grant of rights with this flailing conference. But luckily, what I heard was Oregon came in, they heard the deal, and they said, sorry, we're leaving.
Yeah, basically what I heard is when they were getting ready to have the meeting, Oregon said that they had an issue with how Apple was going to do like their streaming, and so that canceled the meeting immediately because of how they said that.
Yeah, I heard it was not very good. I heard it basically Oregon went in there, and Oregon was the one that by the end, the last couple of days, you're hearing it was Oregon. It was good. Whatever Oregon did was either going to end the Pac-12 or continue the Pac-12. And so when Oregon walked in, they're basically like, we're not doing this. We're going to take the Big Ten offer because it's actually normal. It's actually realistic. That ended the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to suck how watching the last year for the Pac-12, how it is, but
yeah, it's good. The product on the field is good right now, but most of those teams are going to the Big Ten. So the Big Ten will get a good product on the field.
And then the ones that aren't going to go to the Big Ten, you're going to have go to the Big 12. And I've heard some rumblings, maybe you can confirm this too, that you're going to see maybe teams in the Mountain West possibly join the Pac-12.
Well, there is not going to be a Pac-12. So, in order to have a conference, you have to have 6 teams. So once Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State make it official, and they just got approved to go into the Big 12, that just happened a few hours ago, and they're going to vote. All the board of trustees for Arizona and for Utah are going to vote, and they're going to say yes. So there will no longer be a Pac-12. The Pac-12 schools can go to the Mountain West.
Yeah, I heard Rick Neuheisel say it was going to be the Mountain Pac-12.
Yeah, I guess they could rename the Mountain West and maybe put Pac's name in it, but the Pac-12 is actually dissolved as a conference. And I would have my doubts that Stanford and Cal go to that. I would think Stanford and Cal, my guess is Stanford and Cal might go independent. They might dissolve their programs. There's a possibility they dissolve their football programs. Or they make some kind of deal with the Big 10 to come in at even a lower share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hey, hold on 1 second.
No problem. So what I'm looking at for this is I think that for the Big 10, pretty sure we're going to see probably 2 more teams come in at some point.
Sorry, I had an alarm.
That's okay. That's okay. I understand. Hey, we're both parents. We know how it is. That's why I saw. So I was like, look, let me just go ahead and keep going, just because.
So where were we?
What it was is I remember that when they were talking about Oregon and Washington, they also mentioned Stanford and Cal too, even though you didn't really hear much about that, and you may not hear much about that for a while. But the thing is, they could be like the stepchildren from the Pac-12 if they do come to the Big Ten. I think that's the best way to put it.
The problem with Stanford and Cal is actually the viewership. Like having media partners actually buy them into the Big Ten. There's really just not the what's the word I want to look for? There's not the consumer demand for Stanford and Cal. Now they have a good media market in the Bay Area, and they're 2 of the more prestigious universities in college football from an academic standpoint. But I don't know. I wouldn't. Yeah, because the Big Ten, they have a good thing right now. They have 18 teams. Huge. Yep. It's the biggest conference, right?
Yeah, they actually just dissolved their divisions, the Legends and the other division. So they're probably going to need to.
Yeah, they'll probably have to
form up 2 different divisions coming up. They probably have to reform them now.
Don't you think they need 3?
Honestly, I think they need 2 more teams so they can do 4, because what they were one scenario that they were talking about for the Big Ten is you have the 4 different divisions, then you have the top 4 teams come out of it. You have 2 teams on one side, 2 teams on the other. Then the winner of both those goes to the Big Ten championship game. Have a playoff in the Big Ten.
That definitely could work. The reason why I was thinking of 3, and then when it comes to 3, it wouldn't be as much about like the top 2 teams with the 2 best records end up. Like I wouldn't say that how I was envisioning it was whoever the top 2 teams are, the best record, are the ones that play for the Big Ten championship. But you would have scheduling around the pods. So you'd like have a West pod, a Midwest pod, and an East pod. That for scheduling, not as much for much for. But yeah, what you're saying is, if you had 20 teams, then you would have. Hold on, because right now there's 4 teams in the West. So who it depends on who you bring in. Because then if you bring in 2 more from the West, then you have 6 in the West, which obviously that would be a bigger division than the other divisions. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, because I'm curious if it'll happen for the West, or if, say, they go to the East, say with like hypothetically like a Florida State or a Clemson. It really just depends. I mean, they get some from the ACC, so
hold on 1 second.
You go ahead and take care of that. I got this. We're good. So, Yeah, if we were going to do it from the ACC, I would say we would go more toward Florida State and Clemson, just because right now Florida State, the North Carolina athletic director, isn't very happy. Today he talked about how Florida State hasn't, how they're basically talking, and he doesn't like that they're talking because with them talking, it means that they're making it more difficult for the conference. But I was looking at one of the records for the ACC, and it shows that for ACC championships in football, Florida State has 15. The rest of the combined ACC has 13 since Florida State's been in the league. 15 to 13. Now, I understand Florida State, like I talked about on Wednesday, they would have the exit fee and then they'd have to go to court because of the ACC, how it would go for the contract that they signed till 2032 or 36. So, I mean, it's still a work in progress. We're not anywhere close to it yet, but I think it's coming. The only question is which teams are going to come. Is it going to be someone like Florida State or Clemson? Or could it possibly be like a team from the Big 12 that we haven't thought about? Say, like, maybe hypothetically, let's say someone like Oklahoma State. Now I know Mike Gundy wouldn't do it, but in the event that he thought about it, that would definitely be a brand that would be very, very interesting. But that's what we're talking about Big 12. I don't think it's going to happen. But if we were, that would be who I would consider maybe a team. I think that another team from the Pac-12, at least one, is going to come. I do not think it. I mean, it could be Stanford. It could be Cal. Let's see who else we got. Because I mean, another team could be Notre Dame, but I highly doubt that. And another one that just joined the Big 12 that I'd be curious to see if they would think about it would be BYU. Just because they did just join the Big 12, but they've been independent for so long. I would think that they would be a team that would be interesting if they were going to do that. So the only schools right now that are left is Washington State and Oregon State. Because, like me and Tyler were saying, Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah all are looking toward the Big 12. Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Washington are all coming to the Big 10. So you just have Washington State and Oregon State, besides Cal and Stanford, as the teams that are still in the Pac-12. I mean, for all you know, we could get another team from the Big 12. Like, if it wasn't BYU, maybe a team like West Virginia. Or for the ACC, maybe you have a team that's because I mean, the independents you have right now are Army, Notre Dame, UConn, and UMass. But Notre Dame already plays an ACC schedule at times. So I don't know if I could see Notre Dame coming to the Big Ten. It'd be great if they did, but I can't see that. And UConn, other than basketball, I really don't think that they would have a whole lot of times to bring to the Big Ten. Now, I could be wrong, and at some point we may see that happen, but until I see something otherwise, I don't think that that would be good or be beneficial, I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, when you're looking at the ACC, for Boston College, Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami, NC State, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. The two teams besides Florida State that have been mentioned were Virginia, North Carolina for recruiting. Although I know that when me and Bob talked on Wednesday, we talked about Miami and Florida State. Welcome back, sir.
This happens quite frequently when we get on here. Unfortunately, it's at night, and it's when all my kids, and there's always like either a kid pukes or there's a lizard running around downstairs. So it's always something. So
fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not always the best. If we did it, it'd have to be at like 11, which is too late. So, anyways, back to
I do
where were you at? You've been obviously alone here for like 5 minutes.
That's okay. So I'll tell you what I've been looking at. First of all, I went back to the Pac-12 to see the two teams that are left, and besides Cal and Stanford, and it's Oregon State and Washington State.
Yep.
So I was spitballing a few colleges that could possibly join the Big Ten if they were going to add two more. I said, I'm not saying this will happen, but just a few names that I could think of could possibly be something like BYU, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. I mean, you could look at the independents like Notre Dame or UConn. I would say Notre Dame would have the better chance.
For the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, just because UConn, other than basketball, they are not very good. So
No. BYU is not an option. Oklahoma State's not. For the Big Ten, the Big Ten is the, like, think about it. The Big Ten, just who have they brought in? Who have they added the last 4 years? I mean, the last year. USC, one of the most storied brands in college football history. Los Angeles, like huge donor base, multiple national titles, always has one of the best rosters in college football. Okay. So then you got UCLA, one of the most storied basketball programs in basketball, one of the most, they're top three in most national titles won and all that. Then Oregon, which over the last 20 years has been one of the bigger brands in college football, backed by Nike, have won 7 Pac-12 titles over the last 15 years, have played in 2 national championships. And then you got Washington, who, has won a national title, so they've added, only teams that they have added have been really pretty prestigious teams. So when you think about that, they're only going to add, because it already has 18 teams, right? They got enough like teams that probably should not be in the Big Ten, but they got in when the Big Ten wasn't so big. Think Rutgers, think Maryland, think Indiana, think like schools like that.
Iowa.
So they're only going to add like, I mean,
2.
That's why I don't even, or if they did add more than 2, let's say they went up to 24, they're going to add like Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, like really prestigious basketball and football brands.
That's why when I was talking about ACC, also don't want to forget Virginia as well, because
for basketball, and academic, and they also want to have good academic. That's what makes, possibly because they are West Coast, because they could be good scheduling partners with Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC. They are rivals of UCLA and USC, and they're obviously really prestigious academic schools is Stanford and Cal. It's not the product they're putting on the football field or the basketball courts. And the viewers are not good. And the overall athletic revenue is not good. So their revenue is all about research and academic, for academic stuff. So, and the thing is the 4 teams, like, would you consider Oregon a prestigious academic school?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
No, they aren't. And even USC is not a bad academic school, but it really is their sports. It really is their football programs for USC and Oregon. So I think if I was going to say, hey, who is the Big Ten going to offer? If I was going to pick, it would be like Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Miami.
Now, I mean, I'm going to throw a wild card in there. Just hear me out, okay? What about Pitt?
No.
Probably not, but I mean, it's another one.
What does Pitt offer? Why would the Big Ten? Why would the Big Ten add Pitt?
Maybe because of how they are a basketball school at times. I mean, they're not as great for football. I admit that.
Yeah, but they're not great viewership, not great revenue. An okay market, definitely not a powerhouse in football, not a powerhouse in no. I really the only teams that aren't powerhouses I could see is Stanford and Cal because of their academic prestige and because of the West Coast. It could be easier scheduling partners for USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Yeah, no, they're not going to poach any of the Big 12 or the lower tier of the ACC.
Okay, fair enough.
They would only take the big schools in the ACC, and Stanford, Cal. So.
Yeah, I know that the North Carolina athletic director is mad at Florida State for talking, but the thing is, when you look at the Florida State football program for ACC championships since they've been there, compared to the other ACC schools, Florida State has won 15 ACC championships. The rest of the schools combined in the ACC have won 13. I mean, even though Florida State hasn't been the best the past few years, the brand that they've been able to develop and
yeah, I mean, they've won 3 national championships in the last 30 years. I mean, Florida State could go to the Big Ten for sure. So could Miami. So could Clemson.
Yeah, the only thing is, besides the exit fee, they'd have to go to court over the contract with the ACC. So
I don't know. Yeah. And so you got the Big Ten and SEC. They're huge. These are huge media partners. They're 1A, 1B. Then who is that third conference? You could say the ACC has Clemson. They have Florida State. They have Miami. They have the North Carolina, Virginia. They have the academic. They have the athletic accomplishments. They have the national championships in football, the national championships in basketball. But they're also stuck in a terrible grant rights agreement. And they have no room to really grow. And the Big 12, which looked completely dead in water, lost Oklahoma, lost Texas, but they have rebounded and gotten all these good second-tier schools. They're now about ready to add Utah, which low-key Utah has won the last 2 Pac-12 titles.
Correct.
And played in the last 5. So, and it's a growing market, Salt Lake City. And they got their biggest rival, BYU. And then they have one of the best basketball schools in Arizona. They already have one of the best basketball schools in Kansas. TCU just played for a national title. And all the other teams in Texas are leaving that conference footprint. You could argue that the Big 12 had a good media rights deal, got on top of it, were aggressive, have a good basketball conference, and have a good enough football conference that I would rather be in the Big 12's position than the ACC's.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say the Big 12 is third, and the ACC would be fourth to me. Now, the thing that has worked out right now for the teams that are leaving the Pac-12, because of how the TV agreement was going, none of them had to pay an exit fee, which that wouldn't the ones right now who are leaving. They don't have to pay an exit fee, which that is huge. Because a lot of times when you're leaving a conference, if you have to pay an exit fee, that's one of the more difficult things you have to deal with.
Yeah, I would still. I don't know if to go back to the other point. I still might maybe would say the ACC's third, because you look, if you just look at the 2 big revenue sports is men's basketball and football.
True.
And Miami's won 3 national titles in the last 30 years. Florida State's won 3. Clemson's won 2 in the last 10 years. North Carolina's won 3 in the last 20. Virginia won 1 5 years ago. Duke's won a couple, has won like 5 in the last 25 years. I just think of the accomplishments of the teams are just better, that they're just better teams, better athletic departments because of it. Then, like, the problem with the Big 12 is in football, who's won a national title?
Texas, but they're leaving. Oklahoma, but they're leaving.
No, of the new Big 12, the one that's going to be starting next year, who
No
has
one, I
won?
believe.
So you're competing against the SEC, who has multiple, the ACC, who does have multiple, the Big 10. Actually, you know what? To be honest with you, the Big 10, if you actually just look at national titles, does not have as many. In the last 30 years, Ohio State's won 2, and obviously a huge brand, so like no joke. And Michigan's won 1, and USC won a couple, but actually ACC actually has more. But obviously the Big 10's better.
Don't forget Michigan State too, though, please, sir.
They did not win a national title in football.
But in basketball, they did.
I wasn't talking about basketball. I never brought up basketball.
Well, here's the thing: you were talking about.
I said football. I said football.
Well, when you were talking about the ACC, though, you were talking about
when I brought up. Okay, so this is why it doesn't make sense to what I was saying right now. I brought that up when I brought up the ACC, when I compared what they are in football and in basketball. Because if I was going to bring up basketball, has anyone in the Big 12 won basketball national championships?
Kansas,
Baylor.
That's it. Yeah, Baylor,
Arizona.
Now they're coming in. Yes.
Yeah. So see, no, all of this is talking about the 2024. I'm not talking about now, because obviously Oklahoma and Texas are still in the Big 12. USC and Oregon, Washington are still in the Pac-12. I'm talking about 2024.
Okay, gotcha.
No, as a basketball conference, Big 12 is really good. Well, as a basketball conference, they're really good. But what sport by far makes the most money?
Football.
Brings in 65% of the revenue.
Yep, that's football.
So if you look at just the football teams, actually the ACC is second to the SEC. But when you look at the compilation of like how it's doing revenue-wise, the media rights, and the growth of the Big 10, obviously the Big 10's in a better position in football. So, yeah, I mean, and I think in the near future, when they have the 12-team playoff, you'll see one team from the Big 12. You'll see 1, maybe 2 from the ACC. You'll see the one group of 5, and then the next 7 or so will be from the SEC and the Big 10.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I like about Oregon. That's like they can be the 4th best team in the Big 10 and probably make the playoff a lot of years.
Yeah.
If they finish 10-2 in the Big 10, there's a decent chance they finish in the top 12 and they're in the college football playoff.
True, although for the Big 10, you're going to have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, maybe Michigan State, and then you'd have Oregon, USC, UCLA.
That's how you're ranking them?
I'm not.
Or you just say? Are you just naming teams?
I'm naming teams that are usually up toward the top of the Big 10.
Gotcha. Oh, so I thought you might have been going in order.
Well, I mean, hypothetically, if I was going in order from last year, it would have been Ohio State.
No,
I'm sorry. Michigan, Iowa. Then it would have been Ohio State.
not Iowa. No.
Didn't Iowa play for the Big Ten championship?
No. Well, if you're going to actually go with how they were ranked, let's do it systematically. How they were ranked in the final poll.
Okay.
It'd be Michigan 1, Ohio State 2, Penn State 3. Are we bringing the Pac-12 into the Big 10 here?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Washington 4, Oregon. No. Washington 4, USC 5, Oregon 6. If that's how you're going to go off last year's
Sure,
rankings.
we can do that. Yeah,
And
because
actually, take out Washington. I think Washington, they had a good team last year.
Mhm.
I don't know once Michael Penix leaves. I know how they're recruiting. If I was going to say, you're going to ask me right now, ask me, who do I think the next year? Who do I think the top 5 teams are in the Big Ten?
Who do you think they are?
Ohio State,
Okay.
1, Michigan, 2,
Okay.
and then basically a tie between Penn State, Oregon, and USC.
Okay.
Those are the 5 best teams next year. If you look
Yeah.
at the roster,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's who I'd say the 5 best. And then the ones right outside it would be Washington, Wisconsin, and maybe UCLA. That's a good comp. That's a
that
good
of Michigan State. That of Michigan State. Just because Michigan State had an off year last year. I mean, Mel Tucker got the huge extension, but then he blew it. So
I don't know if I see the roster there that can have them be on a consistent basis good.
That's fair. That's fair.
If you look at just the people on the roster, like the blue chip numbers matter, and the blue chip numbers for Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, USC, those 4 specifically, and Penn State. Sorry, did I say Penn State? No, wait. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, USC, and Oregon are significantly higher. So I would say that those teams are the ones I would bet on being consistently better. But yes, Michigan State, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is a team under Luke Fickell that will be pretty freaking good.
I agree.
And I would be shocked if Nebraska under Matt Rule starts being a lot better. They're already recruiting much, much better. It's going to be a tough conference. I'm just like thinking about it. I mean, and then UCLA, they got Dante Moore, a 5-star. Chip Kelly, he's always going to be a good coach.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be it's going to be a fun, good conference. It's going to be a tough conference.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, that's why when I found out that news earlier, and I mean, you and me have been talking about it this whole week, and just seeing how it's been going, because I'm pretty sure if we go back and listen to the show we did, I'm pretty sure I mentioned Oregon and Washington, and you looked at me and said, "No way."
No,
I'm pretty sure I did that.
You might have said Oregon, Washington. I didn't say no way. I actually predicted a year ago that I thought Oregon and Washington were going to end up in the Big Ten. Nope, I know that for a fact.
No, I remember that. I do
once
remember you saying that.
UCLA and USC, I said, well, I think the back 10 is going to have trouble staying together. I already was seeing it. And I said, I think Oregon and Washington will eventually end up in the Big Ten. And then the Big Ten ended up meeting with Oregon in Chicago and ended up meeting with Washington in New York. And I was like, oh, maybe it happens sooner rather than later. Then it kind of calmed. But when they did not sign this media rights deal, I was like, is Oregon and Washington going to reach out to Big Ten and say, hey, we'll come in at a lower share? That seemed to be what happened. That's what happened, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think they did reach out and they said, hey, do you have a spot for us? And the Big Ten's like, well, if you come in at half share, we can get you in. And they did. Because it's a good value. I mean, it's a good value for the Big Ten. I saw a few reputable sports people, journalists saying, oh, I don't know why they would add them. I don't know why the Big Ten would add them. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you're bringing in reputable brands that are going to bring in numbers. Second of all, you kind of got a problem with UCLA and USC when it comes to scheduling, because they're all the way out here and the rest of the Big Ten's over here. I'm like, don't you want to bring in a couple other teams to schedule with them and make it easier for the student athletes, especially for like some of the other sports like baseball and women's soccer and sports like that? I'm like, don't they need another West Coast partner? And then I'm like, and you can bring in these other teams if they're willing to accept a half share. Why wouldn't you take it? Because they're going to be able to fill in the slots. They can fill in the West Coast time slots. I'm like, it seemed to be a win-win. But there was people like Stuart Mandel for the Athletic and Dan Wenzel for Yahoo Sports that were like, oh, I don't understand why they would bring him in. And I'm like, I do. I totally do.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
no, I was pretty convinced that they were going to end up eventually there. I didn't know about now. I thought maybe the Pac-12 was going to pull out some kind of media rights deal.
mhm.
That didn't
Yeah,
happen.
that's just the biggest disappointment. That's just the biggest disappointment that I was hoping it was going to be better, but when I heard it was only like 20 million, I'm like, really? $20 million?
Crap.
It's
Pathetic.
pathetic.
And none of it on linear TV. All of it subscription. So you
I mean,
really are counting on people to pay the extra? Would you pay extra money to see the Pac-12? Probably not. No. And
heck
like
no.
I probably would because I'm a diehard Oregon fan, but
Of
most
course.
people won't. And that would, kill recruiting. Why would recruits go to a school that people
Oh,
can't
yeah.
see them? The conference would fall more and more into obscurity. It'd become a less and less desirable product. And some people are making the argument about Oregon specifically, like Oregon can rule the pack and get an automatic bid to the CFP every year. And I was thinking, well, they have the 12-team playoff. The top six are going to make conference champions make the college football playoff. I'm like, for the next 2 years. I'm like, in 2 years, the Big 10 and SEC are going to be like, no, we're not giving the Pac-12 champion an automatic bid. The conference sucks. It's on Apple TV. and so
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just like, the long term didn't make sense. And then when I saw that media rights deal, it's like, Oregon, get out. I was even slightly being like, well, if the Big 10 doesn't take you, go to the Big 12.
Yeah, but I mean,
Weird.
if the Big Ten didn't take you, that would be one of the dumbest moves that would have been happening.
Yeah, but the Big 10 does have 16 teams. They do have enough money.
True.
They do have secured their media rights. Maybe they're just like, no, we don't want to expand. But once I heard that Washington and Oregon were willing to come in at half the share, I'm like, they can't bring in another media partner to offer another $60 million for a West Coast product that will bring in the revenue. And it happened. It actually happened pretty seamlessly. So the good thing is there was a lot of hand wringing of like, oh, how are these Pac-12s going to stay together? Well, the Big 10's like, we got you. The Big 12's like, we got you. And that took care of the hand wringing. They're like, bye-bye, Pac-12.
The Big 12 just announced Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah as additions. It just is breaking news on ESPN.
Oh, no way. Well, there you go.
Right now. So
You're right. They just did.
Yes, sir. That's why normally I try to not interrupt per se, but for that, you can't pass that up because that's gold right now, and you knew it was going to happen. I mean, I feel bad for them, but they literally walked into it, and I mean, the Pac-12 commissioner's got to be sick to his stomach right now because I think didn't he just take over the job?
George, yes, you are. They just voted them in. So, wow, the Pac-12 is done.
Yeah.
Is the Pac-12 the longest running Power 5 conference?
I'm not sure.
It's them or the Big 10.
I know the Big Ten's been around over 100 years. So.
And the Big 10 ended them. That's sad. Oh, the two most storied conferences in college football, and one just put the other one to bed. Well, it is
the Conference of Champions is no more, my friend. I'm sorry.
Wow. The Pac-12 just came out with a statement. I don't even know how you can come out. How do you come out with a statement? Did you see the statement? They just came out with a statement.
I have not. Go ahead. What's the conference? Or what's the statement?
Okay, hold on. It is.
And the Big 10 is the oldest.
Statement from the Pac-12. Today's news is incredibly disappointing for student athletes, fans, and alumni and staff of the Pac-12 who cherish the over 100-year history, tradition, rivalries of the Conference of Champions. We remain focused on securing the best possible future for each of our member universities. They don't have anyone.
Yep. The Big Ten has been the oldest conference. It's been around for 125 years.
And it's doing amazing.
Yes. I mean, everything that they've done.
Bad. Oh, I mean, and I like the Pac-12, but okay, I liked the Pac-12 until the recent years, and then I started liking Oregon, and I didn't like the Pac-12. They handled COVID terrible. They handled the Pac-12 network terrible. They handled all the branding, like they did everything backwards from Larry Scott until George Kliakoff, and it's sad, but like I liked Oregon and I did like the Pac-12, but it literally did everything the wrong direction, and the conference, I hate to say it, deserves to go away because it just didn't. They just did not do what was necessary to be a successful conference. So I don't know what to say.
No, I mean that was why when we had that breaking news on here, it's a shame, but it was expected, unfortunately, and I hate to say that. I really do. Because
it's Pac-12. We wish they would have found a way to get it done, but
yeah, but when you're not.
Are you there?
Yes. There we go. That's a little weird.
What happened?
My microphone acted up for some reason.
Okay.
But the thing is, when you're not valued or when you're not given a quote that's toward your value, you're not going to want to stay. And unfortunately for Oregon and Washington, just how that deal was, I mean, I hate to say it, but it feels like it was a slap in the face.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, the brand and how Oregon's brand isn't only for football and basketball. You can look at like a men's track, how they used to hold the championships there, and like just other sports that they're involved in. Like volleyball, I know it's kind of big there, and sometimes baseball is. But the thing is, when you're just going to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to try and give you maybe $20 million," we just have to. You're going to do a subscription only service. You're not going to be on TV anymore. It's like, are you kidding me with that? I mean, the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, they have their issues. Don't get me wrong, but the thing is, they have made it that if any school is going to come, they're going to see how they're only getting a half share. They're still making it that, hey, here's a half share. This is still a lot of money that you're probably not going to get anywhere else, and we're going to try to make it competitive, just because we have a good conference and we want to have you join and be competitive as well.
And also, if they bring in another media partner, which I think is very plausible, if not next year, in the next couple of years, and that will also bring in, they will end up making more than $33 million a year for the next 5 years.
Oh, easily.
I think they'll eventually make 40 some. And Oregon, honestly, because of its alumni base, who's its biggest donor? Who's Oregon's biggest donor?
Phil Knight. Nike.
One of the wealthiest men in the world. So Oregon's fine. I am a little more worried about Washington, but I think Phil Knight might help him out.
Yeah.
But Washington doesn't quite have as much money. They're in a little, like that was even kind of the rumblings, was the deal might not be good enough for Washington because of their financial situation. So I'm a little more concerned about Washington, but and that's why, because Washington doesn't have quite as much talent on the roster. I'm a little more worried about them financially. That's why I don't know if I would be as bold to say that Washington's going to be really good in the Big Ten. They might be. I think they'll be pretty good, but I could see them having a little more trouble than Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to be dynamic, but I think that they're going to have a better opportunity. Even though they're going to have to work harder for it, I think they're going to have to work harder for it in the Big Ten, honestly. I really do.
Well, it's going to be a tough conference. There's no denying. So will Oregon. So will Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, just because I mean this in a nice way, but in some ways, in the Pac-12, it wasn't as tough at times.
Yeah, I mean, Pac-12 has had some tough. I can't believe they came out with that statement. Wow.
I mean, I hate that they did, but it just
That's just an embarrassment.
it really is because I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say it, but it just not only is an embarrassment, you're basically making the teams that are still there. You're making it seem like, well, they aren't worth it, which that's a problem all in itself because they're the ones that, even though they aren't the ones that people are trying to get, they were still loyal to the Pac-12. And I think the commissioner, I guess they brought the commissioner in from being like a television network executive. They thought that was going to help. And unfortunately, the way that he did that, I think part of the issue is because of Apple. He wanted to go with them because of what happened with Leo Messi and Inter Miami. He thought that he was going to be able to use kind of what they're doing for that. He could use that as a positive. But unfortunately, the way that he did it with college football, with the brand that college football is compared to MLS, it just blew up in his face.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. I don't even know what to say. It's crazy.
So I mean, as much as I hate that we had to break the news, but I'm glad that you were on here just because you've been the whole time that we've talked on here and done shows together. You've been Mr. Pac-12. Let's be. I will
Well,
fully
I'm
admit
Mr.
that.
Oregon.
True, but with you being Mr. Oregon, you've been Mr. Pac-12 as well because you've been able to talk about certain things to the Pac-12 that not
Yeah.
everybody would know about, and so because of
Exactly.
that, just watching how it is, and I mean, I I know you're very happy for Oregon, and I'm glad for that. But I can also tell that just with how the Pac-12 implosion happened today, I know that it's tough because you being a diehard Oregon fan, you've been watching how they've been in the Pac-12 for your whole life, basically, and so just seeing how, even though this is going to be a change, it's going to be beneficial. It's not the one that, in some ways, you wanted per se, but just with how everything went down, like you said, the time frame came up differently than you thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I am really excited for the new Big Ten. Next year will be an exciting year, and it's the first year of the 12-team playoff. So not only do you have a new Big Ten, do you have a new SEC?
mm-hmm.
You have a new Big Ten, you have new SEC. Who knows if there's still further expansion in both conferences, like I said. And you have a new Big 12.
Yep.
And I actually like the Big 12. Like, I know there's not the big names and teams that have won the national championships, but I like TCU. I like Utah. I like the Baylor program.
Sure.
I think the Kansas State's a good program. And so I'm excited to see the new Big 12. I think some people are really bemoaning the new landscape of college football, and there's some things I don't love. NLI is a little weird right now, and the transfer portal has gotten a little out of hand. There's just so much, just guys that transfer 3 schools, and that's just ridiculous to me that you should transfer 1 and that's it. But the new conferences, yeah, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I know that people are like, oh, going to miss the regional, but I kind of like you get to see Oregon versus Maryland. I don't know. It's kind of. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy it, embrace it, enjoy it.
Well, that, and I mean, another thing is like for softball and for soccer, I think that's going to be a whole nother, take it to a whole nother level. That and for track as well, just because with how the Pac-12 has been and with all the teams that we are getting now have been standouts for track. And then, I mean, USC just won beach volleyball, the national championship for that as well. So, I mean,
I do. I am going to mention this quickly. I do worry
Sure,
about
go
the
ahead.
travel for some of those sports. The travel is a little
Mm-hmm,
concerning
mm-hmm.
for some of those sports. Like football, you only have to do it a couple
Yes.
games a year. Um, a little bit more travel for volleyball and soccer and baseball. So even basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a little concerning. That's why it made sense for the Big Ten to add another 2 Western teams. And that is why,
Mm-hmm.
to go along with the academic prestige, why maybe Cal and Stanford makes sense. Because then you got 6
Yep.
teams. You basically have half the Pac-12. You have half the Pac-12,
Mm-hmm.
and you can create like the Western Division, where that's where you play. Like if you're in basketball, you play those teams 2, maybe 3 times, and then you just play all the other teams once. In football, you play
Yeah.
all the teams in the Western Division, and then maybe only do the cross travel for a couple games. That's my only argument right now to why I could see Stanford and Cal possibly being added.
Okay.
We'll
I
see.
mean,
We'll see.
it just
What's
got,
your
yeah, we
what's
got a
your
whole
prediction? Do you think
year.
they add Stanford and Cal before 2024 season, or do they
If the
add someone
school,
else?
if they decide to keep it for toward the west, I believe they will get Stanford and Cal. If they decide to go to the east, I would say they'd maybe look at someone like Florida State or
What do you
Clemson.
think they do? Or nothing? You can also say nothing.
No, I think they're going to add 2 teams. I'm wondering if they're going to go after 2 teams from the ACC, honestly. As much as I'd love to see them go to the other 2 teams for the Pac 12 just because of how stringent the academics are, but I wouldn't be surprised if, say, they got, I'm just throwing out here, say maybe Virginia and Miami.
The only thing I understand what you're saying, but well, Virginia would be a little weird. They're good at basketball, but they're not good at football, and it's a little out of the footprint. I don't get Virginia. That would surprise me, to be honest with you. And then Miami is like way down there in the southeast. Obviously, good.
I'm thinking more for recruiting. So
Yeah, I understand you have the market. Yeah, and that's another thing. Virginia is not a great market either. Charlottesville, it's an hour from me. Um, yeah, I'd be sorry. You know what? The more that I think about it, if they add 2 teams, while I don't think they bring
mhm.
in the viewership, while I don't think they bring in the necessary athletic profile, especially in football and basketball, but because of the traveling logistics and because of the fact they're in the West Coast, they are in the Bay Area, which is a big market, and they are prestigious academic institutions, I would predict Cal and Stanford, because
Okay.
it would just make sense with how big the conference has gotten to
Mm-hmm.
try to create a pod where those teams can mostly play each other, and they only have to travel a little bit across to the Big Ten. And then you could do your divisional thing. Well, no, you couldn't. Well, maybe you could, because you would have 6 teams in the West, but then it'd be 5, 5, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you might be able to do your divisional thing where you have the 4 divisional champions play each other, or you could just do 2 divisions, West and East, and I guess you'd bring Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska to the West. That's another option, but
Well, we've got a whole year to think about it and figure
I
it
know we have a
out.
season
But
to come. How do we even focus on this season with all this crap happening?
I know. I mean, that's why when they talked about Colorado going to the Big 12 first, I mean that was part of what I was talking about on my show on Wednesday. I was talking about that, and then the Florida State situation, just trying to talk about different teams that could be coming over, so that way we could start to, I guess, get the ball rolling just with how it's been. I mean, I still went into like Northwestern, some of the other stuff happening, but it feels weird because as much as we want to talk about how the football is going to be with just how the different conferences are right now, it's making it to where you can't focus on it yet. You want to, but with just how crazy this month has been, month and a half. I mean, it's mind blowing in some ways just because we figured it was going to be a regular year, even though you knew some teams were leaving, but instead, all of a sudden, boom, okay, we got 6 more teams gone
Yeah, what is it?
in under 2
Yeah,
weeks.
6. Yeah. Crazy. Just like that. You dissolved a whole conference. Like, how's think about it. The Pac-12 has to play this year. How demoralizing is it going to? I mean, this is the last time they're going to have a Pac-12 championship. This is the last time they're going to play these teams play each other.
I mean, in some ways, they got it's like when the Big East, when they went down, when they lost all their teams. If I was the Pac-12 commissioner, I would talk with him because while the Big East hasn't been as good as glory years were, they still have been able to recover enough to where they're still doing it.
Now, I heard there was one person that brought up this kind of idea, and what do you think about it? So you obviously have these Pac-12 schools doing to the Big 12 and the Pac-12 into the Big 10. How about scheduling like with the West Coast teams in the both conference in the Big 12 and the Big 10, the former Pac-12? How about doing like scheduling like non-conferences series with those teams?
They could try for that, but the thing is, depending on the availability, that's going to be the problem because usually what they do is for the non-conference, a lot of times that's where they do the games where they pay the schools to come in and basically beat the tar out of them, then send them on their merry way with a check.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how nicer to say it than that.
What you would have to probably do is drop the Big 10 conference games from 9 games to 8.
I'm not sure if that's going to happen, honestly.
I don't know either, especially because of the revenue they're going to be able to bring in. So, but that would be an idea.
So apparently my friend just showed me some of the information that for the Pac-12, like we knew, it was going to be about $20 million annually. The full share of Big Ten schools are going to get $60 million from CBS, Fox, and NBC. That's the other thing you got to think about is the Big Ten isn't going to be on ES. This is, I think, the Big Ten's last year on ESPN, and ESPN's pretty salty about it. So they're going to make sure to limit the Big Ten as much as they can because they're definitely salty with that and how they've had to cut corners in other ways over at ESPN. So I mean, it's going to be something.
Well, do you think ESPN eventually signs on as another media partner?
It's possible they could. I would not be surprised. But the thing is, I'm waiting to see if ESPN gets sold to a different company. Because that's something that's been floating around as well. Whether it's been like, I don't know if it was, I want to say it was like Apple or Amazon or NBC. Like there was some other one that was looking at buying it. I forget. I've heard something about it.
Is Amazon in college football at all?
I don't believe they are.
Why would they buy some media rights to the? See, that's who I'm thinking. I'm thinking Amazon. Why wouldn't Amazon jump in?
I'm pretty sure I heard something about maybe Amazon looking at buying ESPN because getting it off of Disney's hands.
They can jump right on the Big Ten for like 150 mil, just like that. And then that's another what, like 8 million, 9 million. So that's what I'm saying. Oregon, it's like if you're looking at short-sighted, you're like, oh, Oregon, you're only making 33 million. Why? But you're looking at what's going to happen. You're looking down the road. Like they could immediately within like 2 years, another media partner jumps in and they're making like 9-10 million more. And now they're at 43 million. So whereas the Pac-12, who was going to jump in on the Pac-12? I mean, maybe someone could have, but it was, as of right now, there was no one really interested. So,
Oh yeah. No, I know. I mean, that's why for me, I've just been like you watching and keeping track of everything, just because. I mean, I don't know what to say about this other than it's monumental today, because we haven't really seen anything like this. I mean, you saw how they would for the
well,
Big East, how they imploded, but seeing how the Pac-12 imploded, not only to the Big 12 but also the Big 10.
well, I think the thing that made it more surprising, like than the Pac-12 than the Big East. So the Big East is in the footprint of the ACC, in the footprint of
Mm-hmm.
the SEC, and the footprint even of the Big Ten. That makes sense. The Pac-12 had no rival. They had the whole freaking West Coast, and they somehow could not keep it going. They had no
Yeah.
rival. Not one other Power Five or big conference was out there, and they could not keep it going. It's sad. It really is. It's really sad. Where you actually have Oregon State is a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford is a prestigious program, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not without a conference now. They're without
Yep.
conferences. Would the ACC consider adding those four? I just don't know. Like, I'm just trying to think.
I don't think they would, because the ACC barely is going to be giving the other schools they have in there $30 million
No, but they'd
right
have to buy.
now.
Like, would the ACC be able to secure like Apple? Apple.
I don't think so, because right now with their contract, how they have it set up right now with ESPN, I don't think that Apple's going to want to have them do that unless they would do the streaming when you're already in with ESPN Plus.
So would
So
it
I
have to?
don't think that that would go
Would it
very
have to be the
well.
Big 12?
It would have to be the Big 12, or they'd have to look at maybe going down
Oh, I know. Yeah,
to like a WAC or a Mountain
Well, I do know
West.
that. I know. Well, Oregon State and Washington State might not have a choice. I could see Cal and Stanford because they have big endowments because of
Mm-hmm.
their institutions. They could go
Yeah.
independent for a year. They could for sure go independent for a
Yeah.
year, maybe two. And then if they didn't get a conference, they would have to just probably move on from their.
Yeah.
Which I wonder if Big Ten saves them. The more that I think about it, I wonder if the Big Ten saves those two. Especially if
Well,
they
I mean, I
could.
know that the Big Ten had done that, so they had gone in, and the Big Ten had definitely said Oregon and Washington, yes. Maybe what they did is they said, let's wait on Cal and Stanford for a little bit. Maybe we'll give them right until the year, so that way the football season starts, so that way they can just try to work on figuring out the financials for them too, just because I'd love to say happening, fortunately, just because
What'd you say?
I don't know if Cal and Stanford would get a half share.
Yeah, I don't either. But at this point, beggars can't be choosers. They probably would take 20 million.
Mm-hmm. That, or they would take, hypothetically, say they would get 20 million, but then they get like some royalties or something. So that way, it would still sweeten the pot more, just because.
And maybe the Big Ten is able to secure another. Like, hey, at this point, they offer this to Apple. So
Mm-hmm.
Apple was willing to offer the Pac-12 200, right? What if
I think
Apple
so.
then all of a sudden says, "Hey, Big Ten, we'll do you. We'll
Yeah,
give you 200."
that could happen. I mean, I'm
And then
not.
and then obviously at that point, then you can go right in, give Stanford like 30 mil,
Mm-hmm.
Cal 30 mil, and then the other 18 split 140 million.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking off the
Sure.
top of my head.
Of
The
course.
Big Ten is in such a good position right now.
Oh, yeah. It's great. I mean,
They,
I've been a fan of the Big Ten the entire time. So, I mean, just watching this.
so have I. By the way, I've always been Big Ten over any other conference. I'm a Minnesota guy. I'm Big
That's
Ten
right.
over every
Yep.
other conference. Yeah. So Big Ten, like while I might have seemed like a 12 because of Oregon. I'm Big Ten. I grew up rooting for the Big Ten. When they played in the Rose Bowl, I always rooted for Wisconsin. I always rooted for Northwestern. I always rooted for Ohio State. I always rooted for Michigan. I always rooted for Purdue. Whoever the Big Ten representative was, I cheered for them over the Pac-12. It wasn't until I moved out to Los Angeles and became a Oregon fan that suddenly I became a Oregon fan. But I still, if it was a Big Ten, like Stanford played Iowa, I rooted for Iowa. When what's other games? Now Utah versus Ohio State, I might root for Utah. But for the most part, Penn State, I was rooting for Penn State over Utah this last year. So for the most part, I still would find myself rooting for the Big Ten because I'm a Midwesterner at heart. So that's the good. I'm glad that the Big Ten's doing so well. I'm glad that they're basically have become the super conference, them and the SEC. And yeah.
I mean, you know what this means, right?
What?
What we're going to see this year, college football-wise, is going to get even better next year when the schools do go to the other conference. So we're getting a taste of how it's going to be just without them being in the conference.
Look at this. So this guy commented, Jonathan Smith, the coach of Oregon State, makes more per year than the Mountain West Conference media deal pays out to its members annually.
I'm not surprised.
The head coach makes more than. What's up, buddy? That's my son. They make more per year. Jonathan Smith makes more per year than each team gets paid for their media rights deal.
That sounds about right.
Now let me mention this here. What if Apple decides to take the $200 million, they give $100 million to the Big Ten, and they give $100 million to the Mountain West? Would the Mountain West then be more appealing? And then that Stanford and Cal goes to the Mountain West, and then also is able to pay Oregon State, and then it probably is not a Power 5 conference, but would you watch a conference with Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, Cal, Boise State, San Diego State? I mean, what if they went over to the American and took like Tulane and SMU? That would be a borderline Power 5 conference. And remember, with the current college football playoff, the top group of 5 school gets an automatic bid. Do you think that automatic bid would come out of the Mountain West every year? Hello? Hello? Alan, are you there?
See how that.
You froze. But did you hear that question I asked?
I did not.
So let's say the Apple then gives $100 million to the Mountain West. The Mountain West is then able to utilize that to pay their members more. That brings Stanford and Cal over. That brings Oregon State and Washington State over. Let's say maybe they're able to get SMU and like Tulane or something to move from the American. That's a borderline Power 5 conference.
Yep.
And remember, the top group of 5 school makes the college football playoff. In the new college football, 12-team college football playoff, don't you think that would probably come from a conference like the Mountain West if they had extra teams?
100%.
That would actually be a pretty good conference.
It would. I mean, we'll keep playing Conference Monopoly another time, definitely that, and we got the shows coming up for where we're going to make our picks and everything, and then like I said, we got the weekly ones. But well, sir, I have kept you. Huh?
Yeah, it's been a long show. It was good.
Yeah, it's been worth it though, just because I mean we're able to do the breaking news and just talk about how it's been. Because just wait till we get to actually talk about the real football that's coming up. So, but sir, if we were going to try to get in touch with you outside of here, how would we do that?
I'm on at the TurnerCast. I think I actually streamed this podcast live on my Twitter feed. So it's at TurnerCast. And yeah, excited to talk football, excited to do some bets. Excited to do some bets and excited to talk about the last year of the Pac-12.
Yes, sir. We got a lot of stuff to look forward to. If you find me on Twitter, I'm at AlanFWest or Alan.West46 on Instagram and Facebook. This has been the Top 25. Thank you for your time, sir. Have a great rest of your weekend and see you next time.